Good evening. I'd like to call to order this regularly scheduled meeting of the City Council for the City of Calistoga. It is Tuesday, August 20th at 6:01 p.m. City Clerk, has this meeting been properly noticed?
Yes, it has.
Thank you. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Kraus?
Here.
Councilmember Lopez Ortega?
Here.
Councilmember Williams?
Present.
Vice Mayor Dunsford?
Here.
And Mayor Canning.
Here.
Thank you.
If you haven't already done so, please either silence your cell phones, turn them off, or mute them, whatever it takes. And if you can all please stand and join for a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. We did receive some sad news last week with the passing of former Mayor Jack Jingles, who did serve this community for many, many years, not just as the mayor, but also in several roles in the city council, boards, commissions, etc. We did fly flags last week at half-mast for Jack, and as soon as we're aware of any services being put forward by the family, we'll make sure that everyone is aware of that. We will now move on to oral communication on consent items or non-agendized items. This time is set aside to receive comments from the public regarding matters on the consent calendar or matters of municipal concern not on the agenda, pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.3, also known as the Brown Act. However, the council cannot consider any issues or take action on any request during this comment period. Speakers are encouraged to limit their comments to a maximum of 3 minutes so that all speakers have an opportunity to address the city council. And as always, I have speaker cards here. After I go through the speaker cards, if there's anyone else who wishes to address the council during oral communication, please make yourself known. The first speaker card I have is Martha McCoy. Over there. Should you so choose, but you are not required, share with us your name and your address, and please limit your comments to a maximum of 3 minutes.
Okay.
Thank
My
you.
name is Martha McCoy, and I'm at 2209 Moore Avenue. And I'd just like to speak to you tonight around the issue of the cell phone siren system, or the tower system that's coming to the board in the future from Illumination Technologies. And I would just like to know that there's been thoughtful research done on the placement and locations of these systems, that the protection of our town, we feel pretty much there's unanimous agreement that we need good alert systems and we need good fire recognition systems, and that the process be objectively considered with all the best options and financing for our community. So that's my point there. My second point is one of process and procedure. And as an involved member of this community, I am feeling very concerned because I think this is part of our bigger system and everything's legal, that we are able to have a project such as this come to the point of almost being voted on from the city council without more public awareness, especially from people who it affects. And that's our entire community. It's not just Moore Avenue. This is bigger than our little neighborhood. So what are the things in place? I'm appealing to City Council as representatives, all of you, of protecting the best interests of our community, health, safety, economics, to look at what are the things in place that something could come to us and be presented to us within less than a month of it being voted on, potentially voted on, as almost a done deal with great urgency as the best and only option to be presented before this season's fire season, and something that's free. That was a lot of temptation to move it forward fast before digesting something that's being put right into my own neighborhood. And so I know the process that was followed was legal. I'm just curious, how do we as a town and city deal with a system that has things in place that something can sneak up on us in a way that we may not have any input or control of what happens because of investment that might have been made up to a year and ahead on a project. That's my point.
Thank you. BJ Hopgood. Hey, BJ.
I'm BJ Hopgood. I live at Rancho de Calistoga, number 157. And I'm here tonight to express my concern about the portable generators our residents are buying in preparation of our electricity going out for 3 to 5 or more days. According to the National Institute of Standards and Technology, you should place your portable generators at least 15 feet from your home and point the exhaust away from your home and any window, doors, or vents. Some of our mobile homes are only 10, 12 to 14 feet between them. They also say a portable gas-powered generator creates 100 times the amount of carbon monoxide than a car exhaust. The Center of Disease Control and Prevention reported that during the 2004-2005 hurricane season, almost half the deaths from carbon monoxide were caused by generators being too close to their homes. Last Friday at a potluck at our residence, one resident mentioned that he keeps his portable generator in his carport. And somebody else said, "Oh, please don't do that. You're going to blow us all up." And of course, as you know, at our age, with all good intentions, we might just forget. And one of my fears is that we're going to forget that you don't pour gasoline into a hot generator. Also, with our fixed incomes and only X amount of money to live on for the rest of our lives, the expense of purchasing a home generator is not out of the question for a lot of us. So without delay, we really need a plan to fix this problem before we have a major, major, major disaster. Thank you.
Thank you, BJ.
I'd just like to say I'm pleased to see that you have these concerns. That was one of the concerns that I had when I voted for the PG&E temporary power station. Unfortunately, because of the geography of Rancho D, it won't power up the mobile home park during the shutdown. However, I do understand that they will make every effort to, as soon as the conditions change, to switch the mobile home park back on. When PG&E spoke to us, they said that they were going to direct the park to vendors. They didn't specifically say which vendors or how many vendors, but there are some solutions that are out there for the park that would power up the park independently of the grid. And I don't know how your residents would bring this about with the management, because we on the city council are acutely aware that the management over at Rancho de Calistoga drags an anchor on a lot of stuff. But certainly that's a conversation that your homeowners association should have with the management, and there are solutions for powering up the park when the power goes off. So, and maybe even have it a little bit cheaper than what you might be paying right now. So,
Thank you, Councilmember Kraus. Next, Ingrid Estrada. Welcome, Ingrid.
My name's Ingrid Estrada, and I live at 1881 Mora Avenue. And I'm here today to make a request around looking at some additional, either renewed or additional telecommunications ordinances for the city of Calistoga. Based on some recent actions, it's come to the attention of a concerned group of citizens that there seemed to be some opportunity to either bolster up the ordinances that we have or refresh them. Just to add a little bit of history and context here, as we all know, telecommunications continues to evolve at an even more rapid pace than in the past. Many of our ordinances historically have to do with telecommunications, as we all know, with poles, wires, sidewalks, which fit pretty neatly into zoning like commercial, residential, industrial. But as we continue to move into the digital world, telecommunications, and especially wireless telecommunications, takes on a whole different set of meaning, a whole different set of complexities, and a whole different ecosystem based on infrastructure, carriers, service requirements, and consumers and business people's expectations as far as service and requirements for wireless signal provisions. So up until now, there really may not have been a need for some more sophisticated ordinances, but as we look forward, back in 2014, the FCC started to step in and make quite a number of changes to the regulations that they put in place, namely something called a shot clock, which at that time was put in place to help roll out 4G, which is tall cell towers. And then around 2016, they also augmented that to add in more ordinances and regulations on what cities can do or not do around distributed antenna systems. Again, all of this was aimed at making it a more streamlined and efficient process to implement 4G and more wireless to more cities around the U.S. Roll forward to 2018 and 19, and the FCC continued to build on their regulations, now even further regulating the rollout of what we would call distributed antenna systems, small microcells. This is all becoming more and more critical as we look forward to the advent of 5G over the next 18 to 24 months, where there's again going to be a proliferation of small cell microcells and the densification of these microcells as millimeter wave technology can only go about 2,000 to 5,000 feet successfully. So based on all of that, we have still windows of opportunity. Despite all of the new FCC rulings, cities such as Calistoga can continue to control their destiny here by managing the aesthetics, how these microcells will look, where they will be placed, how, if you're going to augment your infrastructure, you'd be working with carriers, licensed, well-known carriers, who would collaborate with their infrastructure people to make sure that it continues to save the charm, the landscape, our historical look and feel, our property values, and our attractiveness to tourism. So what we're asking for today is just the opportunity to be put on a future agenda in order to discuss the possibility of assessing or reassessing the telecommunications ordinances, and we implore for you to not approve any additional or new permits until we get a chance to get everybody caught up on this critical and complex situation and look at these new ordinances and the possibility of implementing those.
Thank you very much.
I also have brought a couple of samples of other cities, Sonoma and San Rafael, who have recently implemented these ordinances for you to review.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lana Richardson.
A little tall up here.
I have the same problem, Lana, when I'm up there.
I don't think quite as much of the same problem. Good evening. I'm here to speak also about the portable generators, and we are all subject to a new reality with our electric service, the possibility and likelihood of public safety power shutdowns, which may be frequent and lengthy during the fire season, which we're already in. This creates a different but related public safety issue. Did I tell you my address?
You're
No?
okay.
Okay.
You're not
Well,
required to,
I'm
but
telling
you
you
might.
guess at it,
because
all right?
I'm also in Rancho. I'm at 61 Vista, and that's why we have this same concern.
Thank you very much.
The shutdowns have resulted in many people purchasing alternative power sources, such as portable generators, which are fueled by gasoline. This concerns me for many reasons. Improper placement of the generator creates a very high risk of carbon monoxide poisoning. It's odorless and of course, can be deadly. Improper storage of the fuel for the generator can create a significant hazard. Adding fuel to the generator when the unit is hot can cause combustion. Spilling gasoline in the vicinity of the generator also can cause possible ignition. I recently spoke with Mayor Canning and also Chief Steve Campbell about this public safety issue, and they also expressed concerns. So I'm bringing this to you and requesting that city officials consider some method of monitoring these portable generators to ensure safe placement, education of the owners, proper usage, and anything else that can be done to lessen the dangers. I don't know the best way to do that. Maybe it means the city should consider requiring a permit and/or safety inspection for portable generators and, of course, education around them. So I'm asking that you evaluate the situation and decide what will be the best solution for our community's public safety.
Thank you very much, Lana.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Next, I have Ivan Miller. Ivan, welcome back.
Ivan Miller, 2100 Moore Avenue. As we all remember well, in October 2017, the entire city of Calistoga was evacuated due to the Tubbs fire. In April 2018, city officials / fire department researched emergency siren systems with the goal of increasing public safety. According to published information, the city had planned 2 sirens, one near Dunawheel Lane, the other near Greenwood Grant. Sirens were approximately $25,000 each. The city has funds set aside for the sirens, but nothing moved forward. As we enter the 2019 fire season, the city of Calistoga still doesn't have an emergency siren system in place. If the city had continued with the proposal researched in early 2018, almost 18 months ago, we would likely have sirens today. This delay is putting Calistogans at risk. Citizens of Calistoga are concerned that our officials have not put the sirens and our public safety as a high priority. We request that city officials revisit the original plan of April 2018 to expedite installing sirens in the most desirable locations on city-owned property or public right-of-ways. We ask that our request, the emergency warning system, be placed on the council agenda for September 3rd, 2019. Let us get this fast-tracked so we have sirens for the wildfire season, which is rapidly approaching. I ask that if anyone in the audience that supports this request, please stand and state your name and address.
Actually, we can do a head count. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
I have a copy of what I just read for all of you.
Thank you, Ivan.
Thank you. Good job.
Thanks, Ivan. Thank you. I don't have any more speaker cards. Is there anyone else wishing to address the council on a, yes, please? What's that?
I appreciate that. I was a bit late.
That's quite all right. Please share with us your name and your address should you so choose, but you're not required to do so.
Yvonne Henry, 1907 Cedar Street. So first of all, I want to thank all the city council members for serving the city of Calistoga. I have a letter I've written that I would like to give to you to be administered into public record, and each of you will get a copy. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to address the council on a consent calendar item or a non-agendized item? Please, Mr. McNay. should you so choose, share with us your name and address.
Oh, you already know my name. Foothill Boulevard. I'm a little confused on item 7. Well, maybe not clear. On item 7 on the consent calendar. This thing that says we're going to do some bonds. And out of those bonds, if we need necessary money, we can get an advancement. Is that correct? Repairs?
So if it's helpful, we're actually going to pull that item and make it an agendized item after item number 9 is the recommendation I'm going to make to the council so we can discuss it fully.
Okay.
That'll force you to stay to the end of the meeting, Dennis.
Okay. One other thing about generators, since I'm up here.
Please.
If you're going to run a gas generator, be sure you don't use any gasoline in it that's more than 4 months old, because the new gasoline is now boosted octane by adding alcohol. The alcohol evaporates, and the generators without that alcohol under heavy load will detonate, overheating the generator and possibly ruining it. So you might want to make note of that.
That's an
Thank you.
excellent tip. Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else wishing to address the council? All right, not seeing any movement toward the lectern, I will close oral communication, and I will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda this evening with the following modification. We will pull item number 7 off the consent calendar and post it after item number 9.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Kraus. We have a second by Councilmember Williams. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Council requests and ideas for discussion. Councilmember Lopez Ortega.
Yes, as you mentioned before, I want to offer my condolence to the family of the former mayor, Jack Jingles. He was, for myself and my family, he was one of the first persons we met when we moved to Calistoga almost 20 years ago. And he welcomed my family into this town with no, with no problems. And he was very supportive of the Latino community always when he was a mayor or a council member. He opens the doors for City Hall for all of us, and he was very involved with the Latino community. So for us, it's a huge loss, and we are really sad about his passing. In other topic, I've been hearing some members of our elderly community that, as we know, isolation is a big problem for a lot of them because they cannot get out of the house or because they cannot go to the senior center in Napa or in Santa Elena. But I reached out to Rianda House and I had a sample of the activities. There are few activities that Rianda House provides here in Calistoga in this room. And I got a sample here, but you can find more information on the Rianda House website, or if you reach out to me, I can get you into their mailing list so you can receive every month a copy of the calendar and the activities that they take place right here in Calistoga. And I think that's it.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Williams.
Nothing tonight.
Thank you. Councilmember Kraus.
Yes, I do have something. There are a few issues that have come up in the 13 years or so that I've been a city councilman that has generated as much interest as the siren/cell towers. And I have met with 2 groups of people in the last couple of weeks, both asking what's going on with it. Some of the information that I had was exactly what was publicly made known by the company that is making an offer to the city to install them. And I'm trying to be very careful because of Chris.
You can make your comments. I can't discuss it.
I understand. But one of the things that has been expressed to me by virtually everybody is that they want the sirens. They think the poles that are proposed are ugly, and they don't see a need for the cell component of it. And my reply to them has been, the city has recognized the need for the sirens for quite a while. I think Ivan's comment is accurate. At a certain point, this council told the fire chief to move forward on getting a proposal for the sirens to go in, and I believe he did that, and there was some testing. I'm not sure how many sirens are actually what is needed in town, whether it's the two that Ivan mentioned, or whether it's 3 or 4 or however many. But we're in fire season. We're not about to start fire season. We're in it. There was a fire today up on Sharp Road. That puts it in focus for a lot of people in town. And what I would like to ask to see if the council agrees or not, that we move forward in as rapid a fashion as we can to get sirens installed. I don't know what the price was when the initial study was done, but I would like to make sure that we have a good price on that. Where the sirens would be if we did sirens alone on a telephone pole. I'm sure the people who have concerns about how it's going to look aren't going to be any more happy with a siren on top of a telephone pole than they are of a siren on top of a pole that looks like an Italian cypress. If they didn't like that, I can guarantee you they're probably not going to like the telephone pole idea too. But it does separate the question as to whether cell is going to be part of this or not. I would like to see what the cost of that would be, and perhaps with the council's agreement that we'd be ready to move forward on that as quickly as possible. So that would be just about my sole comment tonight, and I think that was probably long enough. I think you probably got an idea what I'd like to have the council.
Thank you, Councilmember Kraus. Vice Mayor Dunsford.
Just a follow-up to Gary's comments. My question would be, is it possible for us to rent sirens for this fire season? I mean, I think at the end of the day, we want to make the right decision. I don't want to feel like I'm rushed into any decision, and we are in fire season. They obviously brought out 2 sirens when we did the testing. What would be that cost, and is it something that we could at least do for this season so that we make the best decision?
Thank you very much. A couple topics I want to cover. The generator safety issue, I know, is a huge one. I know people are well-intended and want to be prepared, but you do not need, as Lana had mentioned, you do not need any special credentials or permits to go to Home Depot or Lowe's and buy a generator. And in some of our tighter communities over in our mobile home parks, it is a serious concern. So while the intention is to protect yourself and carry on through PSPS, my concern, and I know the chief's concern as we've talked about it, is are we creating a significant number of additional unintended consequences of fire hazard. It came up, was the topic of a discussion I was involved with down in the county this afternoon as well, or I should say this morning. So I'd like to take back to staff, perhaps in some of those communities where this seems to be the biggest issue, we hold some community forums, some safety forums, Chief, and even if it's advising people, because there are basically 2 kinds of generators. There's the kind that you need a permit for, and then there's a kind that anyone can go and get. And I think our bigger concern, at least the permitted ones, we can have some influence on where it goes, how close, what the proximity is to your neighbor, et cetera. So
I think there's another comment that should be brought up about individual generators. And that is if you don't throw the circuit breakers or the circuit breaker between your home and the power source, when you fire up that generator and plug it into the wall of your house, you're backfeeding and energizing the rest of the system outside of your house. So if you were to have several of these generators in the same immediate vicinity, I think you can see the problem that you'd get into if you had unplanned for voltage, let's say, coursing through the neighborhood. I can't imagine what kind of problems that might come out of that, but I'm sure none of them are good.
A couple other topics. I represent the city of Calistoga on the Upper Valley Waste Management Authority, and we had Cal Recycle, which is a state agency, come and inform us, or give us updates, I should say, on what the new recycling requirements are, starting in 2022 for a soft enforcement, and then 2024 for a hard enforcement on what's recycled, organic waste, etc. This is the largest and most, as I described it, most sweeping change to refuse management in the history of California. I will tell you that, and I've sat on this board for 7 years now, and I know more about garbage and recycling than I ever thought I would, and this is overwhelming. It is going to be significant, it's going to be expensive, and it's going to challenge the capacity of the systems we have, our hauling systems, our recycling systems, as well as our landfill. So this is your kind of first heads up and warning. There'll be a lot more information to come. It's all for the right reasons. Getting to a place where we are working harder to get a better climate, and doing so as locally as possible. But be prepared for that, and there will be information rolling out. It is a state, and this is one of Gary's favorite subjects, it is a state-mandated program.
You're right, it is my favorite subject.
Unfunded state-mandated program.
That makes it extra special.
So they will be encouraging all of us to enforce action. And one of the exciting things, and this took place in the town I grew up in, an early adopter of recycling, is part of this program in California involves lid flips, which is an random inspection of your garbage starting in 2024, just to make sure that you are doing what you're supposed to. And of course,
We
there's
could probably make that a little cheaper if we had some volunteers.
some penalties involved.
No
So
volunteers? I don't see
Ju-
any hands go up, okay.
just be aware of that. I spoke, as I mentioned, as a conference this morning about PSPS preparedness. We in Calistoga are in a very unique position because we're able to speak as we were the first PG&E initiated PSPS power shutdown. It's nice to be first at something, not necessarily that. And just warning other communities that they are woefully unprepared for what's coming their way. We tend to be a little bit of a subject matter expert because we've been through it. Doesn't make us experts by any stretch, but there were key learnings by ourselves as a community, as a city staff, as residents, and also by PG&E that we're hoping will benefit some other communities. And then on the last topic I want to bring up, regarding the expediting of the siren installation, and I can't say much about this other than here's my recommendation. I will not be here on September 3rd, which is the next council meeting, as I already have a pre-scheduled vacation. I would suggest to staff that they expedite this item. There's already a plan in place that the fire chief had sourced that includes 5 sirens. They can explain why, and I would suggest to the council that you expedite the installation of those as quickly as possible. There's already a plan in place to have them installed quickly, absent any involvement my organization would have, but it is important enough to make sure that that happens tout suite, as we say in French, so right away. Okay?
Chris, then, a matter of procedural, I've already had the chance to speak, but I just want to follow up and with Gary and say that I agree that the siren should be expedited. And I'm understanding that the Illuminated Technology will have their proposal before us in September, and that'll be the perfect opportunity to decide how we want to proceed. And so at that time, I'm expecting that we'll have alternative options as well to consider if we
Certainly what the cost is.
don't want to go the one way.
I
We do want to proceed.
Without getting too far into the weeds in this, so I don't get in trouble, my recommendation for council's consideration is on the 3rd, you hear the item, you execute the item, you adopt the item, you install the sirens regardless of what proposals come to you after that.
So Gary, I'm agreeing to move it along.
Okay, I appreciate that. I hope that Martha McCoy doesn't think that we're cramming something else through at the last minute, but this is televised, it's been in the papers, it's, I'll see if we can find a psychic to get it out there.
And I'm sure the fire chief will be happy to share with you the plan. 5 is the number from the signal company, and there's a reason for that, and he can explain all that to you. So, and you can do all of that while I'm on vacation. All right, thank you very much. Moving on, city manager's report.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Just a couple of items real quickly. As Councilmember Kraus pointed out, there is a fire on Sharp Road in Sonoma County. If you follow Cordham Canyon Road all the way to its terminus, it kind of ties back into Sharp Road. It's right in that general vicinity. CAL FIRE has thrown all their efforts at it, numerous air tankers and water drops. I do believe it's contained, and they are starting to get it 100% under control.
Did we have an engine up there?
We do have an engine up there. The water tender is up there. Blake McCormick and Jason Pearson are staffing that, so we have skin in this game, literally.
Great.
Second, and very important to the city, the 4 lights on the Lincoln Avenue Bridge that were under Caltrans control have been energized and are now lit up. So I'm pleased to report that.
Does that make the project complete now, Lincoln Avenue Bridge?
We're missing a few garbage cans, but other than that, I think most are happy.
Let me ask a question about red curbs for the bus stop. I've noticed that people don't pay much attention to where the bus stop is.
So we're in constant communication with NVTA, which operates the transit, and when they advise us that it is impeding their ability to serve their customers, then we'll take another look at what needs to be done. But right now, we're hoping that it will take care of itself, but if we need to step in, we will.
On that note, when Lincoln Avenue Bridge was reopened, it was Caltrans' original plan not to allow any parking on the new Lincoln Avenue Bridge. They were going to red curb the whole bridge. The city asked the question, can your new bridge not withstand all of the weight of parked cars? And they didn't have an answer other than, yeah, you can go ahead and park your cars on there. So that's what we were trying to reduce the amount of red curbing. And as Mike says, Gary and I sit on the Napa Valley Transit Authority, and we'll kind of play it by ear. But I think the bridge is wider, the bridge can accommodate more cars, so let's park on it. So, actually you can't right now, sorry. Give it a quick one. We can't take an action on it, just so you're aware.
I totally
All right,
understand
we'll
that. Just
consider-
for some public input.
Sure.
I ride the bus. People with disabilities, wheelchairs, walkers, et cetera, also ride the bus. When the bus can't park up to the curb and has to park in the street, and people have to get out of the bus in walkers, wheelchairs, they're on the street when they're unloaded. So that's really not safe. And I have seen it a number of times now that we have the new bridge. So
Thank you very much, I appreciate that. Anything else, City Manager? All right, moving on to proclamations, presentations, and awards. Are we doing this? Is he here? Nope. Moving on. Next time? Okay. Well, we were going to recognize Jason Tamani as our newly promoted fire captain, but apparently he has something else at home he's contending with, working with, a new baby boy. Well, congratulations to him and his family. All right, we will now move on to the consent calendar items. I will entertain a motion on the consent calendar as presented, excluding item number 7, which has been moved, unless any other items are asked to be pulled.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Vice Mayor Dunsford. We have a second by Councilmember Kraus. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We do not have any public hearings, but we are moving on to item number 9, which is general government. I feel compelled to start this, but Mike will take us through this. And if anyone leaves the room during this item, perhaps one of the most important things to happen in Calistoga in the last 80 years will find you. But in all seriousness, this is a very significant item. We've been working on this diligently for many years, as you know. We've been taking you through this process as best we can. A lot of people have been involved. And with that said, I will read the item. Consideration of a resolution approving and authorizing the purchase and sale agreement, escrow instructions, and declaration of covenants, restrictions, and reciprocal easements with the County of Napa for the purchase of a portion of the Napa County Fairgrounds APNS 11-140-055, 011-140-006, 011-140-007, and 011-481-022, approving a budget adjustment to the fiscal year 2019-2020 operating budget, creating a new CIP project Fairgrounds, transferring $200,000 from the City Administration Impact Fee Account, Fund Number 48, to the Fairgrounds CIP project, and finding the project exempt from CEQA. The recommended action this evening is consider adopting the resolution. Taking us through this item will be City Manager Kern. City Manager Kern, please.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Mike Kern, City Manager. Before I get started, I want to maybe set a little bit of a ground rule for future public comment. This action this evening is a real estate transaction. It's just a real estate transaction. This is to purchase the fairgrounds, 34.3 acres. It's not to decide what we're going to do with the property, how it's going to be administered. We're going to, basically take care of it, babysit it until we go through the proper public forums and community outreach to determine what it actually becomes somewhere down the road. So if you do comment, please don't get off the rails and make us stay here till like 11 o'clock. With that said.
Well, you took the words out of my mouth. When I opened public comment, I was going to say this is to talk about the real estate transaction, not uses of the property.
So
there we go.
Setting it up
Thank
for
you.
So this evening, we're going to talk about the purchase and sales agreement. Approximately 3 years ago, the city began the process of acquiring the property. A JPA was formed with the then fairgrounds folks in the county. That kind of got derailed, if you will, and it lingered and went into limbo. The city created a negotiating team. They called it a 2x2 committee, which began in earnest the negotiations with the county. Early part of this month, those negotiations were completed, and the result is the agreement and the declaration and the covenants before you. The property is 34.3 acres. It consists of pretty much everything out at the fairgrounds except for the clubhouse, the golf course, and the single-family residence on Grant Street. The county will retain ownership of that. The city will retain or purchase everything else. So it's all the buildings, it's the racetrack, it's the grandstands, it's the maintenance building, it's the big grass area, all of those places where everybody has known to recreate and find dear to the community. The sales price is $7,717,500, right at $225,000 an acre. The sales agreement contains a 120-day due diligence period wherein the city will enter onto the property, evaluate the buildings, look at all of the skeletons, the nooks and crannies, find all the things that we will necessarily need to deal with going forward. If there's anything that causes the deal to fall through, we need to let the county know within that 120 days that we're going to terminate the acquisition. Within 3 days of the action tonight, should your council approve this resolution, we have to post a $100,000 deposit with the county, with their escrow company, Placer County Title, or Placer Title. There are numerous conditions within the covenants. The biggest one is what I'll call a revenue sharing participation agreement. For the next 20 years, should the city sell the property for a profit, or should we entertain a use on the property that is different than what's there now, we have to share up to 50% of those proceeds that we earn, which decrease 2.5% every year for the next 20 years. So at the end of 20 years, that revenue sharing goes away. It's run its course. We are allowed to continue to operate the facility and the property as it has in the past, and to expand on any of those existing uses that have historically happened out there. So, for example, on the RV park, if we wanted to make significant improvements to that, and dress that up, and let's say double the amount of spaces that are out there, we can do so without sharing any revenue back to the county. If we want to expand on the uses at the racetrack, the grandstands, we can do that without sharing any revenue to the county. So it's in our best interest to look at potentially how might we better manage that property for revenue generation, consistent with all of the public input and everything that will happen going forward. But those are just some examples of how the revenue sharing would work and not work. The county, at its expense, will install new utilities to the two businesses, if you will, so the house and the clubhouse. Right now, those are all interconnected with the city's utility, or with the utilities that run through the property. We want to get them on their own utilities so that there's a clear and bright line as to who's responsible for what. Another caveat in the agreement is that in the event that either party decides that they want to do something different with the property, they will necessarily have to undertake a master plan preparation, which sets forth how the property will be developed and what it might look like. Either party has to reach out to the other party to say that we're contemplating a change in how we're using the property. We're going to undertake the master planning process. Do you want to participate in that activity or not? And either party then has the right to refuse to participate in that, or they can join in, paying their fair share contribution for that, so that anything that happens out there is done comprehensively, with full knowledge of both parties on what's going to transpire, and give them an opportunity to participate in that. Each party would share their own expense. We've reached agreement on how the existing utilities would be allocated, so it's based on historic use and per our standard use tables. So, for example, the single-family dwelling would retain the right to have a single-family dwelling connection for water and sewer. The clubhouse would have the same right to connect those utilities. There would be no new utility connection charges levied back for those existing uses. Any expansion of those uses would happen just like any other land use entitlement with the city, where we would have to go through and calculate what those uses might be, and then what the new connection fees would be. We've also worked with the county to continue to work on an offer of dedication for a sidewalk along Grand Street, along the golf course frontage. We've agreed in principle that has to happen. We just haven't fine-tuned where it will be and whether or not there's additional compensation owed the county for that 10-foot strip of land. It's about 1/4 of an acre. And if we put a similar dollar value to it at the $225 per acre, it would be about $56,000 if we paid full freight for it. I don't think we will pay full freight, but that would be the worst case scenario. Or we carve off a little bit in the back and balance the equation so that it's 34.3 acres dead on. So those are the basic deal points. I think the most important thing going forward for me and for staff is that we've got to move very smartly on this 120-day due diligence. We've already done some preliminary evaluation of the buildings that are out there. I think I've mentioned before the 3 large buildings. We had a roofing company go out there and take a look at it. Their recommendation for corrective action is just shy of $550,000 to re-roof those. So it is a significant expense. And I think it's kind of a little bit of the tip of the iceberg that we're going to be faced with going forward. So at some point, we'll need to make some critical decisions on whether or not we want to make those investments, or if we want to basically shutter the buildings, recognizing that the cost to improve them exceeds what their value is. But those are things to be determined during this 120-day period, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up of what we already know. The fiscal impact for the action tonight is a $200,000 budget adjustment derived from Fund 48, which is our government center impact fee, so it does not affect the general fund. Half of that would go towards the deposit. The other half would be for special consultants to review the property and the buildings as part of this due diligence period. The property or the action tonight, as far as CEQA is concerned, this is an exemption from CEQA. This is not a project under the definition of CEQA, because there can't be any environmental harm based on the acquisition of the property. So the resolution before you contains that finding that you will need to affirm and make. The alternatives before your council would be to not move forward with the PSA, the purchase and sales agreement. Under that option, you could either direct staff to terminate all forms of negotiation with the county, or direct us to go return to the county and try and make a better deal. I'm pretty certain that a better deal is probably not going to happen. The county voted this afternoon to accept the terms and conditions of the sales agreement. It was a unanimous decision on their part. So the action before you, I think, is the recommendation is to move forward with the acquisition as prescribed. So with that, I'm here for any questions you may have. I'd like to compliment the mayor on his negotiating skills. The last couple of times that we met with the county, we were at, I'll say, some pretty significant roadblocks where it took some very compelling arguments on our part to let them know that there are certain things that are not negotiable, and that has been incorporated into the agreement before you this evening. So thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Some more background on this, as most of the community knows, it's been going on for quite some time, as referenced by the city manager. All throughout the process, we have, because of how the negotiations are allowed to happen, so that you don't violate the Brown Act, all throughout the process, the negotiation team for the city would come back to the council in closed session, and the only reason we were able to be as bold and stern as we were, or firm in some cases, is because this council stood strong, and this council understood and acknowledged the fact that for the first time in nearly 80 years, we have the opportunity to acquire a significant piece of land in the heart of our community, which is a rare situation to have another jurisdiction own this much acreage in the middle of your jurisdiction. So this council gave us the authority and some boundaries. We came back often to check in, and I see former council member Barnes in the audience. He had a lot to do with this as well, with a very strong financial background helping us through that. And I do want to give kudos to a lot of the hard work also done by some of the county staff as well as ours, and working with the county. I know many of us have very strong feelings about what the county should or should not have done. At the end of the day, as residents of the county, it is their fiduciary responsibility to extract maximum value for a public asset. It is our responsibility, our fiduciary responsibility, to pay as little as possible for any asset we acquire. So there you have two opposing parties moving through. But we did, there were some core principles and concepts that this council just was not willing to bend on, and we didn't. And we're in a very fortunate situation. This is not, as Mike said, is not going to be an easy lift. We were very firm about the pricing because the last thing we wanted to do was become house poor. We didn't want to buy it and not have any resources to fix it. We all know there are going to be significant challenges out there. I did represent us at the Board of Supervisors meeting earlier today, where I do have the signed documents. They did, as Mike mentioned, unanimously approve entering into the purchase and sale agreement. So as part of the process and protocol, this discussion will happen tonight, and we will decide to move on from there. Should we find anything disturbing, scary, frightening over the next 120 days, we do have an out clause. We're pretty confident, we think we know everything that's out there. We haven't met anyone in the county who knows more than we do about the property, for that matter. But I also shared with the county that this is not going to cease being an asset for the county and its residents. It's not just going to be for Calistoga. We're going to continue to make this available, utilize it for all residents of the county, but we certainly stand a better chance of being a better property owner or landlord, which they would also admit and had multiple times in our discussions that Mr. Barnes was partaking in, that over the last 40 years, they haven't been the best landlord. We've had a fair association that has done incredible work with very little resources, very little support, and a joke I would say is that until the Valley Fire of 2015, when Calistoga took in nearly 1,000 residents from Lake County, half of the county supervisors and probably half of the county staffers, just history being history, didn't even know that they owned the fairgrounds in Calistoga. It became quickly brought to their attention because now they were responsible for it. But with that said, it was, we're all in a good place with our friends over at the county, and we're hopefully going to proceed on this. With that said, council members, any questions of staff? And then I'm happy to open this to the public.
So, yes.
I don't have any questions of staff, but I will have some comments before the vote.
Please.
Yes, I do have a question. So we're buying it, Michael, as is.
That's correct.
For the generally speaking. So my concern is about the possibility of hazardous waste. We've had the racetrack out there for all these years and vehicles and so on, and it would be expensive to find something after this due diligence period that would prevent us from proceeding in some way that we want to use the fairgrounds in the future. So can we feel confident that the due diligence will uncover serious concerns such as hazardous waste out there? Is it going to be in-house, or are you going to hire somebody for that? And if something is overlooked, despite the due diligence, I don't know, is there insurance available subsequently if we find something really significant, 5 years down the road that would be an obstacle to using the fairground?
So that's a question that we did ask the county. In the agreement is an affirmative statement. To the best of their knowledge, there isn't any hazardous material out there. It's obviously the uses of the property are what they are. Nobody has come out of the woodwork saying, there's an underground storage tank here or, buried asbestos here. So I'm fairly confident that there isn't one of those smoking guns. The city is self-insured through PARSAC, and as part of that, we do have the opportunity to buy some environmental protection policies, and we have done so, and we will continue to do so and encumber this property with those policies. As part of the 120-day due diligence period, we will reach out to, we've already reached out to PARSAC and asked them if they know of a firm that will do a property assessment to identify, where are the gotchas and what the corrective action might cost. So we've already identified who's going to help us do that. They're out of San Francisco. They're recommended by our insurance company, so I feel good about that.
So, for example, I'm thinking of the Hunters Point situation in the city where the Navy did cleanup, only they didn't do the cleanup, and now nobody wants to use the land because of fear of, in that case, radiation. But so, in the case of the racetrack, will there be some investigation, as to the grounds? So we don't want somebody to object a few years down the road. We don't want to be anywhere near the fairgrounds, even though there are some plans or opportunities there, because they're afraid of exposure to something that's been there. And so does the investigation entail checking the grounds as well as containers of possible hazard material?
So I'm not aware of any containers that are out there. You know, we'll probably look at the buildings to, you know, do a lead and asbestos survey. That's standard. If we believe that there might be soil contamination from the race activities, we kind of know where the pits are and, you know, where the cars would park. We can do some random soil sampling to check for hydrocarbons to see the extent of those. Given that the races, you know, were 2 or 3 times a year, I really can't fathom that, you know, there's this big toxic plume out there from, like you might find in an underground storage tank. But we can do some evaluations on that.
Thank you, Ben.
Any other questions of council before we open the public? Okay. Before we open it to the public for any questions, comments, or concerns, first topic, golf course. The city is on record as recently as this afternoon to the county that should at any point the county be interested in disposing of more land, including the golf course, that we would be very interested, and they do have under government code, they have a requirement to offer it up to us first. So what won't be helpful in this discussion is why aren't you buying the golf course? The price that they're asking for would not be responsible for us to acquire. So golf course is off the table. Second thing, as Mike referenced and I did, this is a real estate transaction discussion for this council to consider. This is not a future use discussion on what's happening there today, what's happening tomorrow, are we going to have X, Y, and Z? That will happen at a later date when we invite the community in for that. And then the last piece, if you have funding questions, I would hold that till we move on to the item after this, which is item number 7, which will help to explain options and opportunities for how we would fund this. So with that said, is there anyone wishing to address the council on item number 9? Don't all jump up at once. Please, should you so choose, Dana, share with us your name and your address.
Very briefly, yeah, Dana Cole, 1458 Fairway Vista Court. First of all, I want to thank you all for your hard work on this issue, which I agree with you, Mayor. It is a very significant crossroads in the history of this community. And I want to thank Jim Barnes also for the work you did while you were on the council to bring us to this point. Just something very minor in the resolution, the second whereas in your resolution refers to a St. Helena RV park. I think that should be corrected to Calistoga RV Park. I don't believe it's ever been known or is designated as a St. Helena RV Park. I don't know why it would be.
Mount St. Helena.
Well, the golf course is Mount St. Helena Golf Course.
Yeah.
But the RV park is not Mount St. Helena RV Park.
Okay.
We can make that adjustment.
Calistoga RV Park.
Well, maybe
Unless I'm
part of
mistaken.
St. Helena.
Thank you.
That's it? You read the whole document, you only found one? And I appreciate you reading it. We got your email earlier today. Thank you. Staff did an outstanding job back and forth, both Mike and our attorneys. Anyone else wishing to address the council on this? Does anyone want to get up and say, don't do it?
I don't want to say don't do it. I just want to
We normally don't allow it, but we'll take that one. Thank you. All right. Yes, please, sir. Should you so choose, share with us your name and your address. Welcome back, Mr. Barnes.
Thank you, sir. Jim Barnes, 1710 Michael Way, Calistoga. First of all, thank you for your kind comments, Chris. We did work awful hard on that, 2.5 years of my life and 3 of yours. It was a monumental task, one which I had the privilege of serving this community. And I can't say I enjoyed every minute of it, but it was an enjoyable overall experience. I would just like to point out that in the late 1900s, in the early 2000s, right about the time I moved to Calistoga, Logvy Park property was purchased. Kind of the same circumstances. A lot of negativity ensued, a lot of support ensued, and the price was considerably higher. I believe that's about 20 acres, and the price was about $6 million. So that works out to about $300,000 an acre. in 20 years ago dollars, so that would probably be 400 now, 450. A lot of people said it was a reach. We couldn't afford it. There was no way we should do it. We were going to bankrupt the city. The council at that time had the fortitude and the foresight to purchase Logvy. 20 years later, look at Logvy. Look what we did out there. Ball fields, soccer fields, baseball fields, a Veterans Memorial, a swimming pool, and a $14 million Boys and Girls Club. And we're going to have a little school in the back, too, I think, pretty soon. That's what we should think about as we purchase this property. Look 20 years down the road, not 2 or 3. 20 years from now, the council that is sitting here, whoever that may be, will thank this council for what they did. So thank you very much, all of you council members.
Thank
Very
you.
much.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else? All right, I will close public comment. I'll bring it back to the council for any comments, questions, concerns. Councilmember Kraus, I believe you had some commentary.
Yeah, I just have a couple of questions, or a couple of comments to make. One of the problems that was out at the fairgrounds under the county is that it was not breaking even financially. And that resulted in less maintenance, higher fees for buildings that weren't maintained as well. And it just became a whole lot of problems. To not purchase the fairgrounds would result in those problems continuing and getting worse, probably continuing to the point to where the county might just have decided to shutter it. And that would not have been good for this community or anybody else. We are not going to have a magic turnaround out there where all of a sudden the fairgrounds either makes money or even breaks even. I don't look at this as a purchase of a fairgrounds, but as a purchase of park property. We don't expect our parks to break even. So I just want to make that point that we're going to make a good effort at making improvements out there, but it's not going to pay for itself. We know that, or at least we should. The other issue is that there are people who are not happy with how the fairgrounds is being run. And when we take it over, there will probably be a different set of people that won't be happy with the way we are running it. It will be a give and take type of a thing. I'm looking forward to having the public comments as to what uses should go on out there and what improvements need to be made. So with that being said, I realize we're going to be spending more money on this in the future, and I realize that this isn't going to take care of all of the problems that have been pointed out to this council from in the newspaper, social media, comments that people have made to me in the street, and like that. It's going to take a while, but it will be much better than what it is today.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I would have to echo some of his comments. Patience, patience, patience. We do not have a magic bullet. We're going to be in this together. It's going to take a while. Having witnessed some of the spirited dialogue that has happened in the past at fair association meetings and things of that nature, in the back, very candidly, in the back of my head, that was one reason not to buy this property. Because of what might come with that. But on the other end of it, it's going to give people on next door something else to talk about. So we've got that going for us. With that said, I will entertain a motion on this item. And how do you need this done? This is single action, correct?
We did catch the typo earlier, so the resolution that you have to sign has already been corrected.
All right. Thanks, Dana.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the resolution.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Kraus. We have a second by Vice Mayor Dunsford. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now the fun part.
Yeah.
How are we going to pay for this? All right, item number 7, resolution declaring intention to reimburse expenditures relating to acquisition of a portion of the Napa County Fairgrounds from the anticipated issuance of long-term tax-exempt obligations and ratifying approval of a professional service letter agreement with Urban Futures Incorporated and authorize agreements with Brandis Tallman LLC in Jones Hall for bond issuance services. The recommended action this evening is to consider adopting the resolution. Taking us through this item, I believe, will be Gloria.
So
All right, City
start it.
Manager
I'll start
Kern.
it. Good evening, Mayor, council members.
They just did one of these.
Mike Kern.
We're off to a good start.
City Manager. So the item before you this evening is a resolution, ratifying a letter agreement that we've entered into with one of the companies. Which one is it? Urban Futures, and then authorizing letter agreements with bond counsel and the financial advisor. The reason that we have to go through this is, one, we're going to basically sell bonds, but they're going to be under certificates of participation. And what that means is, in a nutshell, we're going to pledge city properties and lease those back from the individual companies that are going to be provided the financing. Initially, we need to borrow at least as much to pay for the debt, which is $7.717,500. But we're recommending that your council authorize up to $8.5 million so that we can do some limited improvements on the property, primarily those that are necessary to keep it from falling in further disrepair. It's appropriate that we do that because it is a capital investment on a capital investment. And incurring debt to do so is legitimate. So that's part of the action that you'll be taking tonight. The cost associated with the 3 contracts is just under $200,000. So it's $51,500 for Urban Futures, $60,000 for the bond underwriter, and then $90,000 for bond counsel and bond underwriting. None of those costs are due and payable until the bonds are actually sold. So they are basically doing this on contingency, assuming that the sale will go forward. This evening, there are representatives from Urban Futures and the underwriter, and they've put together a 1-slide presentation that they'll come up and talk to, and I guess I would invite them to come up right now. I believe Ming C is going to take the lead and introduce her team.
Good evening and welcome back.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, and members of the City Council. My name is Wing C. Fox with Urban Futures, and our role is the municipal advisor.
Hi, good evening. My name is Rick Brandis with Brandis Tallman, and our role would be the underwriter.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Nice to be before you tonight again. Dave Fama and James Wozniak at Jones Hall. You'll recall we all helped on the wastewater refinancing, so nice to be before you tonight. I'll turn it back over to Wing C, but just one other mention on the resolution. The city manager did a nice job introducing the item and all of us. Part of it that might be a little confusing to you is the resolution serves as a reimbursement resolution for tax-exempt financing purposes. So before you tonight, obviously, is just the single resolution. We don't have all the bond documents, all the certificate of participation documents, the preliminary official statement pursuant to which we'll actually sell the certificates in the future. Those will be prepared, assuming we get the go-ahead tonight over the next few months and assuming the diligence process on the property is a go and you need the financing. But for the tax-exempt purposes, we need the council to kind of recognize its intention to sell those tax-exempt bonds in the future. So, for example, the $100,000 deposit that the city manager mentioned that you have to make with the county up front. If you, once the purchase agreement is signed, we can reimburse the city from a later financing because we've referenced it in this resolution before you tonight. So there's two elements to the resolution: hiring the team, all of us, but also putting in place the documentation for later tax-exempt financing.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we did prepare a slide generally to describe the different roles in a public sale. You see the municipal advisor role, that would be us, and we did also work on the recent water wastewater refunding. So our role is really to be the fiduciary for the city and to actually quarterback the transaction, making sure that we stay on schedule, the documents get drafted, we review the documents. When it comes to pricing, we make sure we represent the city in terms of selling of the bonds and what Rick and his team will be doing at that time. There's also the Bond and Disclosure Council, which is Jones Hall. The Bond Council drafts all the legal documents necessary for the transaction, and Disclosure Council prepares the preliminary official statement, which is the offering document for the securities. There's also a trustee for the bonds, which acts as a sort of a fiscal agent, and then the rating agency to go to get the rating for your bonds.
All right, thank you. Council members, any questions? Can you share with us, other than you recently, who else you've worked with? I know that you were vetted and credentialed, so maybe make some of the public feel a little bit more comfortable that this isn't your first rodeo.
So I have had the pleasure of attending council meetings before. This is always a fantastic council and just such a great community to witness. So it is an honor to be back before you. Our firm has been in existence since 1972, so we've done a lot of transactions. Last few years, we've been the #1 municipal advisor in California in terms of the number of transactions that we've helped our clients sell. And recently, right now, we're working with the City of San Ramon, we're working with Diablo Water District, and we're working with the City of Hercules on various financings. And we are happy to provide a full resume if you like.
I'm sure we've seen it, but we're just trying to make those at home watching a little comfy. Especially when a guy comes in a tie, we get very nervous around here. No offense.
It's the uniform.
Fair enough.
My firm has actually worked with Calistoga on a number of occasions going back 10 years. We financed the pool and a number and improvements to the fire station and the corporate yard. We also work with St. Helena, cities of Healdsburg and Windsor, and a number of cities throughout the Bay Area, including Fremont and Livermore.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for having us.
And for Jones Hall, similar to Brandis Tallman, we assisted the city with the lease financings for the pool, fire station a number of years ago, the water, wastewater transaction that we completed last year for refunding savings. Other cities in the area, we're currently representing the city of Napa, city of Santa Rosa, recently completed a transaction for city of St. Helena, as well as Healdsburg. So many in your neighboring communities here. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone in the public, questions about how this all works? As we're going to learn as we go along. So at any point during the 120 days, we have to shut this down, we don't owe them anything, right?
That's correct.
All right.
That's not going to happen.
So I have a question.
Please.
Yes. Do you mind just outlining what steps are involved? I know you described the processes, offering the bond and so on, but what are the steps, just for the sake of myself and the public, in summary, this happens and this happens and this and so on?
Sure. So the goal is to work in tandem with the due diligence period so that by the end of the due diligence period, you're ready and you've got the proceeds in hand to go ahead and make the purchase. Between now and then, we will have a kickoff call next week. We've had that scheduled. And it's drafting of the legal documents, drafting of the preliminary official statement. And those will go to the rating agency, which will likely be S&P. We'll have a meeting with them, which takes, we have to send them documents, full documents, in about a week or two before. Then we have the meeting with them. And around the same time, we will be coming back to council with all the documents for your approval for the go-ahead issuance of the certificates. Then we receive the rating. We then finish up the preliminary official statement, post that to investors. Brandis-Tallman does their magic. We make sure they're doing their magic and getting the best interest rates for the city. And then about 2 weeks after that pricing, the pricing day is when the city will sign the bond purchase agreement with Brandis-Tallman. And then we will have about 2 weeks where Jones Hall does their magic and get all the closing documents prepared for us to sign. And because this is a certificates of participation, a lease type financing, Jones Hall will also take care of a lot of the things that need to happen with that type of transaction, like title insurance, things of that nature.
Great.
Thank you.
Would there, could you give us an idea of the range of interest rates that we might encounter here?
Okay.
And I realize we're looking at a tax exempt
Correct.
rate, so it's probably better than I'd get on my house, right?
Correct. So you all may know that interest rates are really at their historical lows right now. In fact, I brought a graph that I could hand out to each one of you. In general, 30-year financing on a tax-exempt basis, the average true interest cost for 30 years is somewhere between 3 and 3.5% on an average, depending on the credit rating and the type of transaction. So we're seeing interest rates well below 4% tax-free, but overall it's somewhere around closer to 3% really overall.
Now, if as we get through our due diligence period here, we decide that because of the condition of the buildings or something else that we don't foresee right now that we need more money than that, let's say another $500,000 or something, do we have to start this process over again, or is it just that we would add that to the number that you're going out for? I mean, obviously you need council authorization.
Right.
But,
you're right. Well before bond pricing, actually before the official statement that goes to investors, which is like a prospectus, we would want to know how much more you want to borrow. We would run the numbers with Wing C and to see what kind of debt service that would mean, show it to staff, and determine if that's viable for you. It would not be a problem to add the additional amount, but as your city manager mentioned, the bonds would be secured by property that would have equal or greater value of the bond issue, the size of the bond issue.
Okay.
So we would need assets to total that amount. Yeah.
Also, one of the documents that will be coming back to you will have a not to exceed amount. So, in preparation for that and putting that number in, we'll want to have an idea, because if you want to go beyond that amount, we'd have to come back to council.
Okay.
I know one, oh, sorry, go ahead, Don.
Thank you. So if certain properties, or how does the security of the properties works? So, so Calistoga has various parcels here and there, and is Calistoga saying we're offering these for security, this one and this one and this one, or is it in reference to the total asset, property assets of the property of the town?
It'll be the former, specific properties owned by the town. We'll explore as well, the county fairgrounds, as a potential, or maybe you could substitute that in, because obviously you may not have the ownership, at the time we're going to issue the certificates of participation, but there are provisions to substitute properties in the future. But to answer your question, yes, we'll have to select a set of city-owned assets, as Rick mentioned, approximately equal to the size of the certificates. So if it's going to be $10 million, we want about $10 million worth of assets. And that can be both the land value, insured values. So we'll take a look at that, and that'll be what we kind of focus on actually as one of the first steps over the next few weeks, making sure that there is that set of assets to work on. The other thing we'll be thinking about over the next few weeks is the tax exempt nature of the financing. We're hoping to do as much of the financing tax exempt as possible, but given that part of the use of the proceeds is going to be buying a part of the fairgrounds where the RV park is, you have some private use there, right? The RV park is going to have some private use, private individuals park their RV there. So that's part of our tax analysis that we as the bond council will also be undergoing. So there may just be a little bit of a taxable, federally taxable piece, which does lead to a smaller, slightly small, higher interest rate. But again, we need to evaluate all of that over the next months.
And is there any likelihood that Calistoga hasn't the properties that would be interesting to you for security?
Yeah, go ahead.
So just to explain the leased assets, so nobody can actually take ownership of the building. So it is a structure where the city agrees to appropriate each year. And that's why, so we have a property that the city is leasing, and so the remedy for investors is not that they can then take over the property, but they have the right to re-enter and release to recover if any losses. So a lot of the investors and rating agency will want to see essential assets. But the whole point of that is that nobody wants to take over any of the city's assets. They just want to see, okay, this is important enough to the city that they will appropriate these payments each year. So it's not a pledge to any of us or the underwriter. It's simply a lease structure, and the investor's remedy is to come in and release the property to recover any losses.
So by releasing, so this is all worst case, of course, but supposing the city defaults in some way, and then the investors want recovery, they want their relief, and so so what happens then again, please?
So they would have the right to, let's say it's City Hall, they have the right to come in and lease it to somebody that can pay to recover their losses.
Thank you.
I had one thing. Every city hall, every fire station in California is financed the same way. So this is pretty standard in California.
If we default, can we just give you this building called even? I think it's only 25 years past its useful life expectancy.
And we painted it recently.
It looks good. At least the roof is that far beyond its useful life.
One of the things that we had in previous discussions, looking at what our ability for debt service was, our attractiveness to the bond market, et cetera, was anticipated future earnings on TOT. Obviously, we have two new resorts that are one opening in first quarter, another one in a few years after that, which, when all said and done, will be greater than 50% of what we collect today, and what we collect today in TOT is greater than 54% of our total. So the question's been asked, can we bond against that, or is that something we keep in our pocket as, hey, that's how you deal with debt service and future needs on the fairgrounds, et cetera? Because it's a pretty significant potential revenue swing.
Yeah, so these certificates of participation are considered general fund credits, which is backed by any of the revenues from the general fund, which would include the TOT. So you can't actually bond against that specific revenue stream unless you go through some processes. But you it's going to be backed by the general fund, so you can look at capacity in that sense. The bond investors, the rating agency will all be looking at projections. Of course, they're just projections, so we need to be conservative about those.
Okay, thank you. Anyone in the public? Questions? All right. Thanks. Thanks for doing business with us again.
Nice to see you.
And we'll forgive you because you did say you do business with our sister city below us. We have like a sibling rivalry with them. We like them though. All right, unless the council has any other questions, we can entertain a motion on item number... Oh, got it.
I'll move item 7.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Vice Mayor Dunsford. We have a second by Council Member Williams. Just have to wait for the view to be unobstructed. There you go. And if you could put some of those on the back table for the general public if they're interested, so that they don't think we're getting something they're not. All right, so we have a motion by Vice Mayor Dunsford. We have a second by Councilmember Williams. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. One thing I did want to say after we approved item number 9, for those of you who are in the habit of writing emails and things of that nature, now would be a very good time, should you so have the free time, write to all of the supervisors, thank them for their cooperation, thank them for their flexibility. It was, for both sides, we both had our positions and needed to do what we needed to do for the benefit of each of our constituents. But at the end of the day, we feel strongly they did the right thing. So if you have some free time, a little thank you note to your Board of Supervisors would be greatly appreciated by them, I know. With that said, and as mentioned earlier, I will adjourn this evening's meeting in memory of former Mayor Jack Jingles. Our next regularly scheduled meeting will be Tuesday, September 3rd, 2019 at 6 p.m. Thank you all. Have a nice evening. Good job, council.